Welcome. It's another Wednesday night. It's Chris Noble. I'm MacKenzie Wilson. We are your hosts over here at the Alberta Landlord Group. You guys are tuned in live for the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk show. Well, it's a bit of a mouthful. I haven't done that in a while. The only show in Alberta dedicated to everything and all things landlording. So tonight we've got two returning experienced landlords coming to join us again. We've got Shelley Visser and Sandy over, both here based in Calgary. We're going to dive in their experience as we've got a laundry list of some great questions that got us thinking that we saw in the Facebook group over the last 7 days that we're going to answer for you. So, Chris, as always, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Team blue tonight by the looks of things, eh?
That's right. Yeah. I had to make sure I pulled my shirt back. I had my 1-year-old clean his mouth in my shirt as usual. So I did a little bit of change of laundry. But anyways, super excited. We're going to get these two lovely ladies on here very soon. I wanted to throw two quick announcements up. So first, our latest sponsorship is Greenleaf Property Management based here out of Calgary. They are both a brokerage and a property management company. They are our premier sponsor for the Calgary area. We are going to expect a live Q&A next week with them. So if you've got any questions that you wanted to ask a property management company and you didn't really know how to have that conversation or wanted to strike up that conversation yourself directly with a property management company, here's your chance. Send us some questions, post them in the group if you just have general property management questions. That will be our content for that show next week. Our date, I believe we're targeting is Thursday of next week. Don't quote me on that. We're going to get that hammered down. I'll post it in the group. The second thing, a sneak peek coming down the line, is a lot of you guys have been asking about this tenant undesirable list or a blacklist or something of that shade. We very deliberately over here at the Alberta Landlord Group has not made a specific Excel sheet or a Google Sheet list for a number of reasons. I'll get into more detail, but we've got a very good legal solution that we're partnered with a third party that has built probably the best tool out in the industry to solve this problem. And it's going to be a nationwide list. So there's going to be some big value adds for you guys. And they've done some special structuring and pricing specifically for us. So super excited. We're going to have that conversation on the 30th, two Wednesdays from now. Anyways, let's get to it. Let's get both Sandy and Shelley on the show. Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
Hi there.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, Shelley.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
So, guys, thank you again for spending some time with us tonight. We put, like I mentioned before, a laundry list of questions together. We can dive right into it, or do you guys got any updates that you guys have been working on before we get into the show? Kind of just give you a little bit of breath of air as I've talked for a bit already. Perfect. No? Okay. All right, well, let's have some fun here. Okay, so is there any questions you guys want to take first you've read through that would be a good conversation to have, or should I just grab one off the list and get us going?
Let's just go for it. Grab one off the list. Yeah.
Let's get one going here. Yeah.
So, while you're looking it up, just let people know that because we're live, you can first of all say hi to us and where you're coming from. So please type in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. It's kind of cool to see people all over. Secondly, if you have a question, put it up and we'll get to it as soon as we see it pop up here, and we'll jump on your topic. So that's what we want the show to be interactive for everybody. So.
100%. So the first question comes through from Melissa. We're having some technical issues. The comments didn't come through as they normally do, so I have to repaste everything. So it's going to take a little bit longer, but we'll get her going. So Melissa writes, since the tenants have left a ton of stuff inside and the lease is up, do they have the right to claim it after the fact? I just want to double check, as the officer I talked to said they forfeit the items inside. And then the second component here is of the house at the end of the lease. There is 2 cars in addition to the personal items that were left. How does this work with cars? So who's dealt with stuff left over a property and on, I guess, an overholding tenant?
Is this overholding? They've left. I'm going to read it as the tenants have left. They've given up possession. So they either abandoned or They didn't show up for the move out inspection, or they showed up and said, hey, Merry Christmas, here's some stuff.
Yeah, let's go with the scenario that the property is vacant and they're no longer there and the lease has been terminated.
Okay, so first of all, I have a hard copy of the Residential Tenancy Act that I print out and I reference often to deal with these things that you don't deal with every day, right? So to make sure that you're following the rules here. I also reference some like a manual that I got from the Calgary Residential Rental Association 2-day Residential Tenancy Act course. It's a must-do, I would say, for anybody managing properties. It doesn't matter if you have 1 or 20. And that's really a course that teaches you about the Residential Tenancy Act and how to apply it with best practices as a landlord. So I reference those manuals more often than the actual Residential Tenancy Act because it puts it into plain, easy to understand language. So I've actually got mine right in front of me, and under abandoned goods, it says, like, if a tenant leaves goods behind after tenancy's ended, they're considered abandoned. So depending on the value of things, this one sounds harder because there's cars involved, and I go, oh no. But if you think that the value of the goods, auction value, not the actual replacement cost, but auction value of the goods is under $2,000, then you can dispose of them any way you want. So if they just leave you all their junk that they don't want at the next place, old broken dressers and that sort of fun stuff, then you dispose of it any way you want, and you can withhold the cost of that disposal from their security deposit. If they're valued at over $2,000, then, and you believe that the storage of them would be unsafe or unsanitary, and then the cost of selling them would exceed the proceeds of the cost to remove and store and sell them would exceed the proceeds, then you can sell them by any means you want at any price you want. But if it's anything else, and I think that would this case, because there's cars involved, it's more expensive, then you're actually you need to store those goods for 30 days. So
looking at the situation holistically, do you look at the total value of just the belongings and then look at the cars, or do you look at everything together when you do the storage?
Well, I would assume you would do it all together. If this were mine and I was wanting to know for sure, I mean, I'm going to read through the RTA and I'm going to read through my notes from the course from the Calgary Residential Rental Association. If I'm still not sure, then I'm going to call, my go-to is Brad from Servit. He represents landlords at the RTDRS, and great resource for me when there's these sort of odd ones and I'm like, oh man, I don't deal with this very often, or this is a new one. I do all my research first and then I call him for the last questions here. But for this one, it's over $2,000. I think you're grouping it all together. It's all their stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think you're then obligated to store it for at least 30 days. And you also need to keep a record of abandoned goods for 3 years. So you need a list of what's left behind, where it was stored. If they were reclaimed, then how much did you hold back for the cost of removal and storage? Yeah, so those details are things that we are supposed to keep. Okay. Another good note though is if you think there's stolen stuff, call the police right away. Right? Have the police come and have a look at it, and then they can haul away the stolen stuff. What do you guys think, Chris, Shelley?
I'll just throw out there, how do you determine okay, so we have that $2,000 hinging point. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that that chair that they left behind is $1,599, right? That's the value to them. So, okay, so how are you in your past? I'm going to defer to you guys because I've actually never had to deal with it. So, and you guys have a lot more doors, you have a lot more going on. How have you dealt with property and placing a value on it and it doesn't come back later to bite you? Because there are those horror stories out there.
As long as you have, go ahead, Sandy.
Go ahead, I've talked a lot, it's your turn.
Anytime you have an item, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, okay, perfect. Sorry, but I have a different setup then. So anytime you have an item, take a lot of pictures. You can go onto Kijiji and get some cost comparisons. You can see what it would cost new. You can take a half value of that if it's new. But most times, if you've got a piece of crap, regardless of what somebody feels, usually Kijiji is a great place to get a value for it, or even under Amazon to get what a new price might be. But mostly, if it's old junk, any court is not going to put a value on it of any dollar cent, really, if it's just a lot of garbage. So I wouldn't worry too much unless it was actually something that looked valuable. Then I would probably price that out to someone who has more experience with that.
So my margin notes in my little course book that I took is not replacement cost, it's auction value. So I think,
Yeah.
Shelley, your idea of looking on Kijiji, and if you're wanting to cover your butt, print out an office chair ad. You can say, okay, well, I thought it was worth about $50 or $30.
Yeah.
But you can also call a bailiff for an opinion on worth and get an estimate from bailiffs. By the way, Brad at Service, also bailiff service. So getting an estimate, if you gave a rough list and said, hey, can you, by email, I would like to do it because then I have something written. What's a rough estimate of what this stuff's worth? I mean, that's what bailiffs' jobs are often to do, right? Is to go in and seize goods. So they have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I love Brad. I vote for him too. He's fantastic as a resource.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that'll be on everybody's Christmas card list.
You should get him on the page then. That sounds like a good recommendation. We'll do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
He's brought out of Calgary.
Yeah.
We seem to have a Calgary-dominated thing here. We need to get some of our rural people. I'm going to go out and start knocking on doors. I'm kind of feeling, I'm kind of feeling like a little bit of a little lonely wolf here.
I am working on it, and I actually did, and that's a good point at this point in the show. If you have interest, I think I've been reached out by a few folks. I'm still getting a little bit more organized at putting these out in the future, but definitely if you want to be in the show, lots of experience, no experience at all, it's good to have that diverse viewpoints. Message Chris or myself, we'll definitely bring you guys on the show. So
one thing I would say is because this has also abandoned cars, you know, like Sandy said, check your documentation. You should have had in your application form what vehicle they had, what type it was, so you know if it's their vehicle or not. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't line up with your application paperwork, then maybe call the police and see if it's a stolen vehicle.
That would be my
right?
thought. If someone's willing to leave a vehicle around, chances are they probably don't own it. So you'll already probably have a very good chance of it stolen stuff. Get the police involved. I'm not going to say they supersede the RTA, but their job is to enforce the law. So if they take a look at it and they find something's more to it, they can confiscate those goods and deal with it. And then from your perspective, your property is getting cleaned up and it's out of your hair. So
it doesn't cost anything. They take the cars away.
Yeah.
Do you guys mind if I jump in since it's my old hat?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Matter.
All right. So you as a landlord, you come across, you have a car that's on the property. So two things you want. You're dying to get. I want that car because I can get an extra $200 for it. Boom, it's going on my bottom line to cover this debt. That's a good, great. So call the police, tell them right there, say, hey, look, this car's left abandoned. What I need to know is if it's stolen, and if you can contact the previous owner, find out the story behind it, if it was sold to my tenant, and if it was, he's abandoned it here, is it possible to get a copy of the bill of sale? Then you can, that's just kind of like, it's always about paperwork, paper trail, right? Yeah. So when the police officer can, if he's on the ball or she's on the ball, quick check, not stolen, registered owner, phone them up saying, hey, did you own this old whatever Yukon? And they said, no, I sold it to, boom, your tenant. Great. Do you happen to have a bill of sale that we can verify that with? Sure. Do you mind if I give it to this person where they left it abandoned? Sure, I'll give you a copy of it. So now, boom, you have a paper trail. It's voluntarily handed over to you. Everything's great because you know why? That person, that car, if it goes to storage, the Alberta Abandoned Vehicles Disposal, they get billed for it. They don't want to be billed for the disposal of that vehicle. It goes back on their driver's license, goes back, it backtracks till it can find somebody it can suck money out of. So that person, if they want to not ever, if you ever sell a car, my God, keep your bill of sale somewhere for 10 years. Keep it, because you have to show that it's been sold, because a lot of people won't re-register it. They'll pay $500 for it. They'll throw some plate off it that they stole off of a vehicle that was similar to it, and they'll drive it, and then they'll abandon it. So there's the nightmare behind an abandoned vehicle. But if you can get your hands on it legally and it can stay there, do what you can with it. So those are how you should do it.
So I had a tenant leave a newer car. Thankfully, she parked it on the street when she abandoned the property, and then also abandoned her vehicle. She decided to take off to Winnipeg. And so the way we handled that, I knew she wasn't coming back, and I obviously you don't want to store it. But thankfully, if it's left on the street, you can call bylaw after 48 hours, and now they'll ticket it and then tow it. So that's how we dealt with that.
So, and if I'm following you right, Chris, and what you mentioned there, if you, let's say you go down this path and you get this bill of receipt and it's proven to be your previous tenant and it's abandoned, do you get rights to those goods since they're on your property? Is that where you're going with this?
Well, where I'm going with it is now it's abandoned property which you have to dispose of. So now you're going to go through the same hoops with the beat up old chair,
with the RTA
furniture,
now, right?
The RTA. You're going to go through that, jump through those hoops now. And if it's a $500 car that you're going to sell to the auto wreckers, $500 you got back,
well,
right?
You know what? At a minimum, most cars are worth $500. Honestly, if it's running, it's probably worth more. It's $1,000 to $2,000. All of a sudden, you're in a position to get 2 months rent back if they have truly abandoned it and you follow the rules and do the 30 days of storage. So I didn't know that was an option. That's actually pretty fascinating. So cool.
Try to avoid putting your cars into storage, because obviously anything into storage if you can help it, because obviously now you have an overhead cost that you're going to have to apply to whatever you want to be able to get as much money out of this stuff once it's legally yours. So now you got a $30 a day storage, you got whatever storage for the car. Try to maintain it somewhere, whether you have an uncle who has an acreage that will take the car for you. Load it up go down and see Rob Bonin down at U-Haul, get a car hauler and take it out to your uncle saying you're storing it, and then you can bill for storage if they want it back. So
totally. So I'm going to throw in, before we get to the next question here, I think we have our furthest watcher worldwide from
you beat me to it. You beat me to it.
I did. This is cool. So I don't have his or her name because
I do. I know her. I've spoke to her personally on the phone. Shelley Rogers, all the way from Australia.
Cool. Thanks, Shelley, for tuning in.
Yeah, she's got
great
a place
name.
in Chesterfield.
Great name.
All right.
Welcome, Shelley.
Let's fly through some questions here. We're about 20 minutes in. So next question. Here we go. So can someone with experience and knowledge in the Queen Courts of Bench please PM me? I have a hearing on Friday AM, so actually this is tomorrow. I have a tenant file and I have had a tenant file a civil application after a notice of default. The RTDRS order was served and the rent and the tenant has vacated, but I do not believe he will withdraw the application. Looking for information on the on this application, had any validation and what my next steps would be, and how the virtual hearing process is. I have a few hearings through the PC, but I have not had the pleasure of going through this alley. Thank you, from Kathleen, or I'm having trouble here.
Callan.
Callan, thank you.
Maybe Callan.
That's a tough one. I don't know if we can really put much I don't know, thoughts to this if we don't have the full information, because it sounds like she's got a property, the tenant is vacated, but the tenant has filed with the Queen's Court of Bench. We don't know what they filed, I guess, really.
Tenant, I've had the tenant file, so she's going to Queen's Bench. I'm a little bit confused here.
Yeah, me too. You know what? I grabbed this and
bench.
I know Rob was on it and gave her a call.
I think what it is, what I understand, is that so Callan, sorry for enunciation, filed at the RTDRS to get rid of the tenant. the tenant has vacated, but the tenant now, instead of going through the RTDRS, jumped that and went right to the Queen's Bench and filed a civil action against the landlord. So
Yeah,
against
civil application
Taylor.
after notice of default.
Right. So what they're probably doing, they could be my understanding of this, if I'm right, or is you might have a bit of a professional tenant. You might have somebody who's just stirring the pot and just trying to make your life more difficult because you are now starting a legal process and just causing you to take more time to go to court. If they are somebody that is not actually paid their rent and they're in default, even if it gets to Queen's Bench, it'll get thrown out. But if
going back to strong documentation too.
Right. If they're a professional tenant, they know how to work the system. So I would definitely get hold of Rob and make sure you have Rob there to guide you.
Legal.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're just somebody who's just trying to stir the pot because they have no other better things to do with themselves, they're just creating more issues for you. And as long as you have your documentation, you should be fine.
I guess why I'm confused is if the tenants filed at Court of Queen's Bench, then the landlord should have been given a package of evidence and what they're filing for. So
it'll get thrown out then.
Yeah, I think that we're missing some information here. So I'm sure I would assume the landlord knows a little bit more on why the tenant filed and what they're claiming.
Yeah. Why don't we just set that question aside? I just text Rob and see if he can chime in with this, because he may have dealt with it there because he asked the person to phone them. I was following the thread. And if Rob joins in, I'll have him jump on our show for 5 minutes and get to that.
If you can ping him the link. Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, we'll bring a guest on the fly. This is all new. I love it. Please.
I think that's awesome. I think the big thing is anybody who, even if we can't get all the other details, is if you are as a landlord suddenly serve papers for Queen's Bench, as long as you do your paperwork, I mean, that's the big takeaway here is your documentation is so important so that even if you are served with Queen's Bench paperwork, you can stand in the security of your documentation.
And to give that context and documentation, if we're talking, say, an eviction for someone of non-payment, Bill Beacle, who has a lot of experience in doing this, his typical documentation are between 80 to 120 pages. So you got to be thorough. But again, it's kind of black and white here. If they're not paying on time, or if there's damage to the properties and all this stuff, get it documented, and the courts will be on your side. Okay. All right. Let's get to the next one here. Someone's saying hi to Shelley Visser. Is that Shelley Visser?
Wayne Hiller here.
Hey Wayne.
He's sending some hearts too for you.
That's sweet.
Okay, I'll hop on the next question here for you guys. So this comes from Barbara. Man, I'm struggling with the names tonight. Anyways, should I demand checks to be in the tenant's name? My tenant runs a business and wants to issue me checks from the business account. Any thoughts? I'm trying to think down the line. I've had, I have had too many problems with e-transfers because they put the tenant in the driver's seat. Checks only now. Doesn't matter. So who wants to take this one?
Well, I kind of replied to her on that.
Oh, okay. What did you say on that one, Chris?
Well, what I followed through is I kind of gave a couple perspectives to her on that, because if you set up an e-transfer and you make it, and I think you ladies probably do this, and you, MacKenzie, as well, as you make it an automatic deposit, do you not?
Yep. So you don't need security questions.
So that driver's seat thing, I don't quite get how they're in the driver's seat, because they're going to bounce a check on you. It's the same thing here. They're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, you know, it is really it's one half dozen of the other, because if you have post-dated checks, you could just go and deposit on the first of the month, and in 3 days have it get passed. But if they have no funds in the account, so what? If they forget to do an e-transfer, then they're in the same position as well. And I think she just likes having the power of, she can go and deposit, and in theory she has that money coming through and not have to hassle the tenant. So I do see that value add from the check-in side. I personally do like the e-transfers. I have automatic email reminders that go up to tell the tenant to pay. So I haven't really had an issue that way. And I'm going to totally segue into another question here. Oh, it's not even here. So Brennan, he's contributed lots of information in the group. He had a phenomenal pro tip in the group about, I want to say 10 days ago or 2 weeks. And e-transfers have a wealth of information on the automated interact email you get. Now, I actually, a year ago, wrote a course on this. And I even have like 3 pages talking about this. And I'm super jealous I didn't notice this. So power to you, Brendan. I should have noticed this. But so I wrote a course on it. So here's a typical e-transfer. You get down to the bottom in this gray print area, you actually learn what bank your tenant is using. Now that information would be super value if you have to go down the collections route. So power to Brendan for pointing that out. He made a post on that. So in my case here, in this example I've got, this email was sent to you on behalf of the Bank of Montreal. So all of a sudden now I know the tenant uses the Bank of Montreal without ever having to ask for that information.
So I do my rent collections a little bit differently, and it's a great connection to what you're talking about there, MacKenzie. So I have pad agreements in place with my tenants. So that puts me in the driver's seat because I send the file into the bank to take the money out of their bank account and put it into mine, just like, so that I tell them, hey, this is how we do it. It's just like paying a cell phone bill automatically each month. So your rent's going to come out of your account each month. So they send, they fill out a pre-authorized debit agreement with me.
Nice.
That says for $1,000 plus rent arrears each month. And I explain what the rent arrears is like. So if your front lawn starts looking like a jungle and we issue a warning letter to cut your grass and you don't do it, then we're going to be hiring landscapers to come out and billing that back to you. Or, you know, they put, true story for me, they put pistachio nut shells down a drain and bursted the plumbing, and then the water went all over the laminate floor, and they put towels on it and left it overnight, so they wrecked the floor as well. Then I can now bill that back to the tenants. So talking about being in the driver's seat, I like doing pad agreements because I'm the one who sends the file to the bank each month, and I have to give them notice if I'm taking anything out more than what is owed. But they've signed an agreement saying you can take my monthly rent and any rent arrears that I have.
I love that.
When I have that, now I know more than just their bank. I know the transit number and I know their account number. So that helps me if I have to garnish wages in the future. So I have a lot of information on my tenants that way. I don't think we've really answered her question. Oh, by the way, so I have mine set up through National Bank. So if anybody's wanting to do that, I've been doing it, I don't know how many years now, but I would certainly share that contact so people can send me a private message if that's something you want to look into.
Do they have to be a corporation though? Do they have to be a corporation?
Go through the basic requirements to do the pad, because I'm actually, I've looked at this a few times, and the times I looked in the past, it was, well, vague, and it seemed a little bit cost prohibitive because there's like a business account was required, some other stuff, and then you had an ongoing cost and stuff. So
you're assuming I have a really good memory because I put this in place a long time ago.
Okay.
So the cost per month, I think it costs me $1 for each transfer that I make out of the account. And I think my monthly general fees are about $15 in general. I'm not incorporated, so I'm a sole proprietor. So that allowed me to get that set up that way. And I think that's all I can really tell you at this point about that. But jumping into her question, she was asking, her original question was, would you accept, if she's going to do checks, then she's going to do checks.
Yeah.
Would you accept it in their business account? And
if you have it on your lease, I think it'd be okay.
Yeah,
tie that in some way.
So if they want to pay you through their business account, I don't think it matters too much. But I think that's a good point. That's what I had thought too. Maybe the lease says John Smith and whatever corporation.
ABC companies paying rental company. Yeah, I think as long as there's a documentation on your lease agreement, and that's your binding paperwork, you should be fine. Because it could get messy in the future if this is John Smith and there's some random third party company paying for the rent and we don't understand the association. If you tie that in, then you kind of tie up some loose ends.
I would also have it documented that just because the checks are coming from your business, at the end of the day, you, John Smith personally, are still liable and responsible for the rent being paid. So it's irrelevant where it comes from. At the end of the day, you are still legally liable for that rent payment.
You know what you could do before we hop to Rob? Rob, thanks for making time on a very random appearance. We appreciate it. High five while you're driving. I'm going to add to this. Maybe I would make the lease in the name of the tenant and the business. And you've got two different entities you could go after for arrears.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Over to you, Rob.
Sorry, I missed the question.
All right, Chris, get Rob up to speed, and we'll let you guys take over this part.
Yeah, I was writing. I'm sorry, ladies, you're going to have to help because what was it? It was to do with a QB matter. So I'll let one of you update Rob because I'm taking notes so we can update the page.
Okay.
Rob, somebody had asked. They said that they had filed at the RTDRS to get somebody out, and then the tenants filed at Court of Queen's Bench, and they have a hearing on Friday, and they had asked someone who had experience with the QB courts to private message them. Did you talk to that person?
Yes, I actually spoke to them today. I've actually had 3 of these in the last 2 weeks, and 2 of them so far have been dismissed. What it comes right down to is when somebody appeals a decision made by the RTDRS or provincial court, they have to show what's called an error in law. And in the first 2 circumstances, it was just a tenant and that just went to the Court of Queen's Bench because they heard the term, well, you can appeal this. So they automatically think with their entitlement that, oh, well, I'll just appeal the decision and have it changed. Well, that's not how it works. They have to illustrate to the judge that through the judgment that was wherever it was from, whether it was the RTDS or the provincial court, there has to be an error in law on how that judge or arbitrator came to that decision. In both of these examples, there was no error in law and it was dismissed in 5 minutes. I just instructed the landlords to ensure that they had their ducks in a row and that they would read out the judgment, do the awkward silence when the judge has to hear what they have to say, and just say, I'm sorry, but I don't believe there's an error in law. And as soon as they said that, the judge both times said, yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And these phone hearings, they're not taking the pre-hearings, not taking any of the pre-hearings in the actual Queen's Bench courtroom. They're just doing the phone hearings, and the judge decides whether or not there's enough evidence to go to a full case. And in both these instances, the tenants could not come up with the tenants actually didn't even know what they were there for. They just came up and said, well, I don't think it's fair that I'm being evicted. Well, the judge goes, well, as the landlord has stated, there was no error in law made, so we're going to dismiss this case. Now, the one that's coming up this Friday, hers was a little different. She got the judgment. They defaulted on the payment agreement. Some of the decisions have payment agreements, so if they decide that if they want to stay, they have to meet the payment agreements. Well, on Friday, they didn't meet the payment agreement, so the landlord showed up with somebody that she knew what she was doing. She worked for a property management company. She bluffed them. She literally said, like, I can have a bailiff here in half an hour. And we all know that good luck in getting a bailiff in half an hour. But the tenant did believe them. And so the tenant grabbed what they could and they left. They gave up possession of the suite. But in the meantime, the tenant has filed with Court of Queen's Bench to appeal the decision. Well, when it goes to the hearing on Friday, it's going to be the same thing. You're already out. So possession and termination are going to be granted because they failed to meet the payment schedule arrangement that the RDTS set out. And since there was no error in law, the judge is going to will just dismiss the action and be done with it.
Simple. There you go then. So it's
Does that
from
somewhat answer the question?
Pretty much, and you made it very clear too. So basically, there's been an eviction process in place.
So I can barely hear you.
Okay, I'll try to speak up over your car radio there. Basically, there's been an eviction in process. The tenant has jumped the gun and tried to do retaliatory, appeal, but on no basis.
Sorry, I can't hear you guys. I must be in a bad reception on Highway 2.
Okay.
Well, we got what you're saying there, Rob. So we'll update it all here, and we'll let you get back at it. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Thank you.
Just run him off. There you go. So from a legal perspective, and again, basically the tenant's abusing the system because, like Rob says, a lot of these people say, "Well, I'm just going to appeal it." Well, it's not that simple. If the person adjudicating or running into the hearing makes a mistake in law, that's appealable. But Otherwise, it's going to be supported by QB. So they're abusing the system. When it goes in, you know what? I would even go further and try to ask for some costs because it's frivolous. And I got awarded a cost on an appeal of $150 one time. So
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No,
Nice,
that's cool.
nice
I had
tip.
to ask for it. You have to ask for it, but I got it.
Cool.
And someone saying pre-authorized debit agreements all the way. It's definitely something I want to look into. So I think we'll make that a future show topic.
I can see those names, MacKenzie, so go ahead and ask me, but that's Leanne Klish. She's asking about, or she mentioned that she's all for PDAs, so
Cool.
or PAD, yes.
PADs.
I want to ask the lady something because now you got me triggered on that. Can you have that as a backup plan and still take the the debit the e-transfers, but also have a PAD as a backup plan? So for when you have these things, or when they bail on you and they've made mistakes and they forget that you have that information, boom, you can snap it out of their account before you even go to the RTDRS.
Oh, that's interesting.
I guess my thought is the reason why I did it is, number one, I want to be in the driver's seat and I want a little bit more control. And number two, I want to automate things. I don't want to have to go through all my emails and say, did tenant A pay me? Did tenant B pay me? Did they pay me the right amount? What am I missing? So for me, it was like, okay, now it's automated. I review my file once a month, send it off before the end of the month, and then wait to see if I get any bounce checked, any NSFs. And the other thing that it helped me do is I know all of my NSFs usually by the 3rd, at the latest, the 5th of the month. So I got response faster than when I was using checks and going to the bank. Of course, when a tenant sends you an email money transfer, you've got the money in your hand. So that's true. You know that it's there. But I'm looking for ways to automate things and make this this job a little less intense, right? So take a few things off my plate. So for me, I tell my tenants there's no choice. We do our rent by pre-authorized debit agreement only.
And why not? It's your business. Run it the way you want.
Yeah. It just automates it.
When I looked at this in the past, I remember you could do two types of pads. You could do a scheduled recurring one, or like you said, Sandy, you can have the permission to do one-offs, a custom amount. So you could probably set this up as a one-off custom amount and use it as a plan B. Collect that information, like you said, Chris. You're not incurring that $1 cost. So keep trucking along with your e-transfers. And then if something goes sideways, and then you pull this out, you can execute it or use it, get those arrears covered, and then take that cost. And like you said, as Sandy's mentioned as well, you're in a very strong position of power, with all the correct banking information should you have to go to collections.
Yeah, I think my agreement is that if I take anything other than what's agreed upon, like the $1,000 a month, I need to give them 10 days notice that the withdrawal's coming out. So if you're using it as a backup plan, like they didn't send me their rent, and it's not a periodic one where it happens on the 1st of each month, you may be delaying how quickly you get your money because you have to give them enough notice that you're going to take it from their bank account. You just can't it's coming out tomorrow, I'm taking it.
Yeah.
What do you do with the scenario you gave about lawn keeping and all that stuff? So do you have to give them 10 days notice on that?
Yeah, so so I set up my pad agreements when I have a little program that I put it into, and I'll say, yes, it's a 12-month lease or a 24-month lease. So now it's set up that it automatically will come out the 1st of each month. If I have an extra payment for a repair or rent arrears or whatever, then I tell my tenants ahead of time. So this extra payment is coming out on this day. But if I'm doing so let's say rents bounce and I get a notice on the 3rd, and so I call them up on the 3rd and they say, oh, sorry, the money's there, you can take it right now. So they've given me permission to take it. I'm not telling them I'm going to just take it. So they've given me permission. So then I'll send them an email and say, okay, great. As we discussed, your rent plus your NSF fee and your late fees for this total amount are coming out on this day, so that I have it in writing that they gave me permission and I confirm it.
No, and that's great too, because you had a verbal conversation to get the permission. You follow up in writing, and if they don't dispute it and you do it, they've accepted that too, right? So that's a really good way to document it.
But if they haven't approved that, then I would need to give them the 10 days notice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I just threw up an addition to that abandoned goods question. Does
That's
the rule
from Samuel Eli.
from Samuel? Fantastic. Does this rule apply to abandoned damaged vehicles that do not belong to the tenant? I'm going to say no.
No, what you do there is really actually quite simple. Is again, go through the route, contact the police, get them to verify who the owner is. If that person has no interest in the vehicle whatsoever, just do up a quick bill of sale for $1 and take the vehicle, and now it's yours. Give it to the records or whoever and get a couple $100 for it. Otherwise, if it is theirs and they want it back, too bad. But have the police check it out and they'll contact the registered owners.
Perfect. Okay, good enough. Let's keep on rocking and rolling. All right, so trying to get distracted by comments here. So.
Oh well, you have to get a little distracted. Where Gabby's right after Wayne for sending you the hard eyes instead of the star eyes. So he's going to answer for that later.
I was reading that. I didn't follow. I'm going to put it up anyways.
Well, that's because of the before comment. So yeah. So Wayne,
okay.
You're on your own, bud. So.
And it's actually funny because her profile picture next to it has her leaning back laughing. So it's really great segue. And I think now with Gabby Wayne, if anybody doesn't know Wayne, he runs a really great podcast to listen to. So, and they talk about working together as a couple. So they may have to redo that session.
Definitely. It's a good listen. It's if you're looking for real estate landlording, Alberta specific investing conversations. I got featured on it a couple weeks ago. So
fantastic.
It's a good chat. There was some really good people. Definitely worth listening to. Some really good guests. Not so much myself, but I did learn a lot listening to get to the conversations. Okay, let's get the next question up. First time landlord question. I moved to BC and I want to rent out my townhouse in Edmonton. I have friends and family to help with the showing the property and doing inspections, etc. However, since I haven't done this before in anyone's experience, is this a lot of hassle? Are property management companies worth it? I've read a lot of bad reviews about them. From Amy. To add on to this comment, this was a very popular post. It had 30 to 40 comments, and it was in 2 to 3 days ago. So it's been generating a lot of interest, and there's people weighing on both sides of the fence that to note it's a lot of work for whoever you pass it on to. If it's if you're especially finding the tenant, if you already have a tenant in place and things are kind of streamlined set up, then it's a lot more minimal. But there's definitely opinions on both sides. Ladies, who wants to take a stab at this first?
I'll start then. So if you live far away, first off, do you want to put your friends and family in that position? First off. And you have to think about it. If they don't do things the right way and things go sideways, how are you going to respond to them? Because it's not fair to the friends and family to be angry at them when they're helping you out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and are you going to compensate them for the time?
Exactly. And if they're not experienced, what if they create more damages because they're just not aware? Property management companies can definitely be worth it if you're not there, especially if you're far away. And maybe if you've got a easy tenant, maybe you want to hire the property management company just to do the move in, move out. Hire them for that.
Yes, I wanted to go that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is do that. See how that tenant is going. If there's not a lot of issues, then you can have your family do a check in 2-3 months for you. Do a walkthrough.
Small stuff like that, yeah.
You can call a plumber, electrician, or whatever. If they do that check for you, say in 45 days or 120 days, and everything is great, then continue going that way. But if they go in and kind of do a video walkthrough with you on it, or you can even have the tenant walk you through on FaceTime or StreamYard or whatever, do the live one, just you and that tenant, and everything is looking good, then you're good. If it's starting to go, hey, that's not so great, or the smell isn't so great, then you might want to then hire the property management company to take that over, because it's not fair to put that on a family it's not their job, it's not their experience. Personal opinion.
Yeah, and Sandy, what's your take?
I think you have some great points there, Shelley. I also think if your family and friends are willing to do you favors, then generally that's because it's convenient for them and it's not putting them out. But what happens when the furnace stops working on December 26th and now you're calling your brother and saying, I really need you to leave your 5 and 7-year-olds right now and go over to my property and take care of this for me. Now it becomes a burden. So if you do a hybrid situation where, okay, I don't want to give it completely to a property management company, and I'd like to lean on my family and friends for these things that are convenient, plan ahead, be proactive. What are you going to do when it's not convenient, or when it's too much for your family and friends, or when it's too busy now for them? If you're paying someone to do a job, then they've contracted to go and do it. So then it's not a burden, it's their job.
It's their responsibility.
So thinking that through, like, what are you going to do on these sorts of situations? And
yeah, totally. And I really like that. I mean, I like the hybrid approach if you've got someone who, and I think the biggest thing here is setting expectations. If you do bring a family member or friend into the conversation, are you compensating? Is there gift cards? Like, figure out something, because there is some effort there for sure, right? There's going to be some after hours calls, and maybe for those after hour calls, you might have a property management company on standby and have an arrangement with them that if you call them out, they'll bill you in a one-time fee. You can really piecemeal and bring the solutions together, or if you want hands off, just offload it to the property management company. And this is a great segue to the show next week we'll have with Greenleaf Property Management. We can ask them some questions on how to interview a property management company, the questions you should be asking, what are the key components and the pricing points around some of these different services, because it doesn't have to be an all or nothing scenario. So.
And the other thing is, look at it from peace of mind. What's the price you're willing to pay for peace of mind? So is it a bit more and have a property management company just take care of it? And you still have to manage that property management company. It doesn't mean you just not pay attention. You still have to manage that they are doing their job right.
Mm-hmm.
But is it worth it to not, like Sandy said, burden your family or friends just to pay them that little bit more? And it will be a taxable write-off, and you're still getting mortgage pay down. Hopefully you're getting appreciation as our market will start to recover. So look at also that long-term reason for why you're keeping that property. Mm-hmm. If it's just one of, maybe it's to come back to, is it a part of your little retirement package? Maybe it wasn't a good time to sell, but you really look at, what am I willing to pay for peace of mind?
Yeah. And if you look at the majority of work done in property management, it's actually all done up front on tenant placement. The tenant screening process is by far the most amount of work. So you can outsource that component. And if everything's done well, this is a townhouse, so it sounds like there's condo or HOA fees that will cover probably most of the maintenance around the property. So it's a little more streamlined in that sense. Then maybe you just need your family member to go in once every 3 to 4 months to do an inspection or that video thing, or like what Shelley, what you said, do a FaceTime call and record it, and you can just say, hey, the tenant, on this day, let's do a FaceTime call, walk me through the property, please tell me if you have any problems. What a powerful way to use technology and save maybe a couple $100 from sending someone to the site. So yeah, very cool.
Can you record those walkthroughs? Is technology available to actually hit a record button while you're talking?
If you do a Zoom call, yeah. If you get them up on a Zoom call, Zoom has recording functionality that could be all recorded, and definitely, if you do a straight like a FaceTime, Google Duo, WhatsApp, Facebook video calls, there's no recording functionality. So easy to use because everyone's got at least one of those apps on their phone. But if you want to take it to the next level, and actually you get a free Zoom account for up to 40 minutes, and you can still record. So
if you're going down that road with the way things are nowadays, I would highly recommend hitting the record button, because could be life-saving for you.
Documentation, and this goes back to the other tips we talked about is on your inspections. Great, use your move-in report with all the check boxes. That's fine. That's kind of a good summary. But do a video recording of the whole session. I've got 20 to 30 minute videos on all my move-ins, and I capture the tenants in the video while I'm doing it, so then there's proof that they're there. It disputes any hearsay down the road. So cool. We got 11 minutes to the top of the hour, and I've got 3 more questions here. So
These are some good questions.
Yeah, it's a COVID question. Let's get this one, and this one might be simpler.
COVID is simple. Oh.
Yeah, here we go. So this is from Laura, and give me a moment. We'll get it queued up here. Ooh, it's long. Okay, so I'll read this quickly. I cannot believe I'm here already. I've had a tenant booked in to move in May 1st. Lease is May 1st, 2020 to April 30th, 2021. Due to COVID, everything was up in the air, and her classes were postponed until September. As the world was uncertain, I told her I would hold it for her until then. Frankly, wow. I did not want to find anyone else during the pandemic either. She moved in 2 weeks later. I've spoken with her to see how things were how she was settling in. And she nicely said it was good. Today, I was blindsided when she texted me that she's found another apartment and she'll be moving out this week. The apartment is great and is not a good fit. Well, we can continue on. She said she would allow me to keep her September's rent. How lucky. I am meeting with her tomorrow. I have a written letter outlining her legal responsibilities and a copy of her signed lease. This woman's probably 35 and has no excuses for how not to know how leases work. Is there some sort of paperwork I should present to her? Your lease it's pretty much, she's got a term lease. There's no way, like this is a commitment. It is for the whole time. There's no 30-day notice or anything like that. It goes for start to finish of the agreed upon dates. So in this scenario, well, you know what, ladies, I'm not going to do all the talking here. Back to you, Shelley. If you got someone vacating early in a term lease, there's probably fees associated. What would you be having the conversation about with this lady?
Wow. First off, the fact that she let her go that long without paying rent is interesting. However, what did change it, as far as I think a court's eyes, is she did move in and she did pay rent. So now it has started a precedent. She's going to be legally liable for the rest of that lease if it's a term lease, like she said. So at that point, I mean, the lady's going to move out, the lady's going to move out. You just have to start the paperwork. At this point, you're still liable for the lease. Do your move out. Get her forwarding address if possible. If not a big deal. Don't fight over it. And then from there, you just start for me, I would just start the process through the RTDRS and just letting her know you are legally liable. I will be going to the RTDRS unless you'd like to work out a payment plan with me. I am going to work my butt off to get it refilled. But, you are going to be liable. And I'd much rather work with you. But just so you're aware of how the process works and keep the emotions out of it.
Yeah, 100%. It's start filling the vacancy as soon as possible at that time of year where vacancy is more important than the dollar amount on the rent. And then you also have the ability to charge a lease break fee, and then she's liable for any recurring costs to re-rent that place out, and she's still liable for that rent until you find and fill that vacancy.
Yeah. Why she let her go that long without not paying?
Yeah, that probably put her in a really awkward position because it set a very high precedent of being lenient, right? So that probably didn't help the situation.
Yeah. Sandy, what about you?
So as soon as I have a tenant who wants to break a lease, I get on the phone right away with them and say, okay, tell me what's going on. I have a notice to vacate form that I ask them to fill out, which says, why are they moving? Are they breaking the lease? When can I take the re-rental fee out of their bank account? So they give me permission right on there to pull it from their account and ask for their forwarding address. I try really hard to get their forwarding address quickly. But the reason why I want to get on the phone with them right away is to make sure they understand what a lease break entails. I mean, I explain it very thoroughly when we're signing a lease, but to make sure that they understand you have a lease break fee and you need to pay that right away. You're responsible for the cost of advertising. You're responsible for the rent until either I find a tenant to replace you or at the end of the term. Are you sure you need to break your lease? And if you need to break it, like for example, I have someone right now breaking a lease because her roommate moved out and she needs a smaller place. And I said to her, okay, don't rent something else until we get this place rented because you can't afford 2 rents. So let's work together and I will tell you the minute we have an approved application, and then I'll help you with getting you a great reference to find a new place. But don't sign another lease and don't rent another place until this one is rented out, because then you're paying for 2 rents. So
Wow.
make sure they understand that right away. And then you hang up the phone and you tell them on the phone, I'll send you an email just to summarize everything we talked about in case you need to reference back to it. And then you type out everything you just said in an email so that you have a paper trail. That's
awesome, Sandy. That's awesome.
Mint. Yeah, I like how you have another document. You get them to sign, and you collect all those key pieces of information, and it highlights to them, hey, like, you understand what you're doing, because, like you said, you need to have that conversation, right? Because a lot of tenants don't realize the ramifications of backing out of a legally binding lease. That they really don't, and all of a sudden, if they know they got to pay double rent, they're gonna probably think the decision through a little bit thoroughly. So,
have you ever had any pushback on that, Sandy, or any of it go sideways?
Oh, sure. Right.
Okay.
There's and those end up being the ones who like just abandon and leave the place, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm going to try to run away from this. Sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not. But I think also being proactive when you're signing your lease with your tenant. I always say, like I use the Calgary Residential Rental Association leases. Section 17 talks about lease break, and I always say, okay, this part's really important. So let's go through this in detail. I need you to know that this is a legal contract that we're entering into. I have legal responsibilities to you and you do to me. And if you break this contract, it's pretty expensive, right? So let's talk about those expenses. And then I make a joke and I say, you know, I hope you get really comfortable. This is our first of 88 leases. You're going to live here till you're 88. But make sure that they know, right, that this, you are now have a legal contract with me so that they know up front. Right. And I said, so get comfortable, hang some beautiful pictures on the wall. We're going to take really great care of you and you'll never want to move out anyways. But be comfortable. You're here for a year or however long your lease is.
totally.
Yeah, I have a spot on mine where when we talk about, I do the same talk like you do. I emphasize how it is a legal document. It's binding. It's upheld by the courts. It is a legal document that the courts look at. So I let them know the gravity of what they're signing. But beside that lease breaking, where it shows my fee, and it states right in my lease that I charge a $500 re-rental fee, they also have to initial right beside it. So there's no way they can say they missed it. I have initials, probably about 10 different places they initial through my lease, just so not only their signature at the end, they can't say, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, me too. They initial by everything I find important.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. I think you just answered the next question that came up on the screen there. Is there a guideline on how much the re-rental fee can be? I don't think there's any rule. Mine used to be $500. It's now 1 month's rent.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think one thing to be aware of, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but if you need to go to the RTDRS and try to collect on a re-rental fee, the rules there is the RTDRS is there to make you whole again as a landlord. So cover your expenses, not for you to impose punitive fines. That's why they don't like late fees for late rent. So you can charge whatever you want for a re-rental fee. And if you get it and they don't complain, you're good. But realize that if you go to court, you're going to have to show what your expenses are to re-rent that place. And if your re-rental fee is higher than those expenses, you probably won't be awarded it. So that's just good to know. You can have whatever you want in your lease.
Yeah.
Whether you can enforce it in court is a different thing.
Perfect. 2 more questions, we'll wrap up. So we might go maybe a little bit 5 minutes over the hour, but we'll be quick and tidy. Great tips, ladies. I 100% agree with all what you said. So Chris Noble asked this question.
I pulled it off the page for you.
I know. I'm just going to say you have to know it. So, okay, the question came off the Facebook to Chris Noble here. I'm new to this. The Tenant Act states the amount knows for weekly and month-to-month and yearly leases. But what do I do if we have a 6-month lease? So I think the question really here is we're talking month-to-month and a term lease. So I'll let one of the ladies take the question here. Where 6 months would be a term lease. Do we need to give notice?
So I think that one's a pretty cut and dry one. So there's 2 types of leases. There's a fixed term tenancy where it has a start and an end date. And there's a periodic tenancy, which goes either month to month, week to week, year to year, however you have, whatever the period is. So this sounds like a fixed term tenancy where there's a start date and an end date. So under the Residential Tenancy Act, neither the tenant nor the landlord needs to give notice to each other. If your lease ends on June 30th, it's over unless you sign a new lease. So the tenant doesn't have to tell you they're moving out, and nor do you have to tell them you're not renewing them. Is that in anyone's best interest? No. So, you know, you'd be silly not to tell your tenant you're not renewing them, and you'd be silly not to ask them, do you want to renew? But there is no notice required at all for a fixed term tenancy.
Yeah. So legally, no notice required. Logistically, you better be asking those questions.
You want to be on top of your business, right? So
Sure.
You're being neglectful of your own business by not following up your renter as you approach the 60, 30, and 60, or 60 and then 30-day mark as to what their intentions are. And if they are going to, they say, yeah, they're going to renew, then grab them for a renewal at 60 days and say, okay, here, we'll sign going into it. Here's your new one. It's going to start. Get it done early.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
And you can write another term lease for a month or 2 months, depending on their situation, your situation, even time of year. I've done 10-month leases. I've done 14. I've done 1 month, and then I did another month, and then I did a 6 month after that, just depending on whether maybe somebody's moving to buy a house, or maybe I'm not 100% sure on them. I'm giving them a chance to prove themselves to me.
Exactly. A term lease can be 37 days. It literally can be any time frame you want. Yeah. Those are just standard ones people pick: a year, 18 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. I think Shelley brought up a good point. I think Shelley and I are on the same page here. I don't do month-to-month leases because it's really hard to get rid of a tenant on that kind of a lease. So if a tenant says, oh, you know, I'm not ready to move at the end of March, can I stay till the end of April? Realize that if you don't put another lease in place, it's now a month-to-month lease. You've had a fixed term, and if you don't sign another lease afterwards, it's now month-to-month. So yes, you could sign a 1 month lease, or you can also do an amendment to the lease and amend the lease end date. And that's usually what I do because it's really simple. You don't have to go through all your lease paperwork again. You just make an amendment to the lease. You're amending this clause. Instead of saying this, it now says this, and you both sign it. Done.
Yeah, and I do mine as a lease renewal. So, but it is a one-page document. Same thing. That it's you know, to the new date, that and all the terms of the original signed document, dated whatever, are all in effect and still considered legal. So yeah.
Okay, so for the newbies in this scenario, this isn't the tenant giving you notice now, which they don't have to. They can just pack up and leave that day. On the other side of it, what if you haven't given notice and you haven't said anything to the tenant, and then the first of the month comes, and now where are they at? I'll just throw that scenario out for you guys.
But wouldn't you kind of know, because you're either leaving the place vacant or you would have been showing it?
No. What? Well, yeah, true. But this is a landlord who is, you know, I'm going to just go back to.
Am I missing something?
Oh, we lost your audio, Chris. Can't hear you.
There you go. I got back. Yeah. So this is the landlord, the new landlords who are great. Oh yeah, I got this lease, but they're thinking, okay, my lease is going to renew, but they don't do anything with the tenant. The 30th of the month comes. It's 1 year in. Now we're 1 year, 1 day, and they haven't talked to the tenant. The tenant hasn't talked to them, and so.
Which has happened.
I know the answer to this, but I want to put it out to you guys.
I see what you're saying.
So now where is that landlord at who hasn't approached the tenant? And so where does it go from there?
If you accept rent, so let's say it's the 13th month, if you accept rent, then you now have shown that the tenant is still a tenant, and you now have an unwritten month-to-month lease.
Yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
And you just entered into contrary, you've lost control, like you say. Sandy is just keeping control of that situation, that rent, or that tenant, because you can. At the end of a tenancy, you have the control to get rid of them. You've just lost it by not paying attention to your lease.
Yeah.
However, you can go to them, and if they're not aware, you can say, "Oh my gosh, we forgot to sign your lease renewal. By law, your lease ended. You have to be out. So I want to make sure it's still legal for you to stay. you know what? Let's get that signed tonight because, otherwise by the contract, you're now an overholding tenant, because you can pull out that clause.
I love that wording.
I want to stay. So then it's like, okay, I'll come over right away. Let's sign this. It's all good. If you're good with that, I'm good with that.
Yeah. I'm really sorry, but I need to do a 3% rent increase.
Yeah. Just, I want to add to this. I love that place, Shelley. That's just a fantastic way to clean up a bit of a messy situation where, life happens. You could get busy that last month. Oh yeah, it's the first. Next month's coming up. I have to renew my lease. I'll get on it. The month passes, whatever, summer, you go on a trip, and then all of a sudden it's the first or the second, and you're in that position. The other thing here to present yourself from going into the month-to-month scenario is get the conversation going on the renewal. Mm-hmm. Have written emails showing the intent that you're not going into a month-to-month and you need to renew the lease. So if they end up becoming overhauled on the first or the second, you've got a documentation trail showing that that's not the intention. And now they're an overholding tenant and they're not in a month-to-month scenario because you've shown the intent to renew a yearly lease.
Absolutely. And if they're insisting that they want month-to-month, you need to be the one in charge of your property. And I did have a tenant that way, and I said, not a problem. We'll sign you a term 1 month lease renewal. And then we'll do it again next month and the following month, and we're going to do it. And then I'm going to be giving you rental increases. And it's going to be a high one on the third month if you're not signing a lease. Because at this point now you're just dragging out. I said, I do not do month to month. It is a term lease fixed proposal. So if they're trying to control you as the landlord, you have to put a stop to that.
Yeah. I got a message earlier this week from a lady, Renee, and she says they have a couple in their her property in Three Hills. And she approached them to sign a lease, and they got angry with her, and they took it as a trust issue and lack of trust. And they don't understand the business side of it as to why you as a landlord need those things. So then she became in conflict with them. They are good people, but yet they refuse to sign a lease with her now. So, but she has them in a month-to-month scenario right now. And so I told her, I said, this goes back to your dynamic of how to deal with this. Say, well, no problem. I said, give them a 90-day notice for a rent increase. Otherwise, if you want to sign a lease, here's what your will be. Otherwise, in 90 days, here's what it's going to be here. So,
that's exactly it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that panned out with them. I can always find out. But
give them the choice, right? If someone's stuck in a month-to-month and you're trying to gain that control back, you've got 90 days to give them notice to do the raise. But if they want to continue down the month-to-month, they're going to pay a premium up here, make it a $300 or $400 raise, or do the market rent on the term lease. It's going to be an easy decision. They're going to sign up for that lease, or they're going to vacate because they think you're a jerk and you're charging an arm and a leg to live there. So, and either way, you get your property back. So
that's a great way to do it, MacKenzie.
Yeah. All right. So one last question. I really want to get to this one, and then I have some comments on the bottom, and I think we're good, and we'll end the show. So first question, or kind of a ranting, made me smile. I have a rental all the way in the Northeast Calgary. I usually love to chat on the phone with potential renters, which I like to do rather than texting. That's right. Fast forward, and we set a day and time to show the house. I even confirm a day before, I again confirm noon the day of, and then again 1 hour before. All confirmations were exchanged as a text. Potential renters confirmed. Come 6 p.m., no reply to all my text messages, no calls. Sure, 15 minutes later, I left very frustrated. I drove all the way to Northeast. Yes, I do live by Fisher Creek in the Southeast, so she's got probably about half an hour drive here. What do you guys do to avoid this situation? Thank you, Renee.
I actually answered that one earlier today. I saw it.
What was your answer?
Yeah.
Life sucks.
Red wine. Red wine is not answer.
Totally.
Actually, you should have put that on the red or white. Red or white.
Well, and I went into a little bit more. I think I didn't get a chance to read all the other comments, but it looked like she had a lot of feedback on there. But I try not to give the address of the property until the day that they confirm. And I always say to them, text me, we've got the appointment, and then I'll give you the address. Now, sometimes people want to see the address, they want to drive by ahead of time, and that's fine. But then I tell them, unless you text me the hour before, I'm not showing up because I am driving clear across town as well. So I'm not going to waste my time. Now, in her case, they had talked the hour before and then they just didn't show. I've had that too. And those are the ones that it's just part of the business. Don't take it personally. Don't ever book something either on an important family date, or say, oh, I'll make an accommodation for you. Even if they say it's the only time I can make, they can make other times. You know, like, don't give up something, because if that does happen, now you've missed your special event and you don't have a tenant showing. So,
you know, the other thing to do is if you can book more than one showing, half hours apart, then you're not going to blow off
15 minutes apart. Call it tea time bookings. You want people to see each other coming in and out.
I do 10 minutes. Yeah, I do 10.
10, that's good.
Yeah. The other thing you could do, and I started this with COVID, is I do a video walkthrough. So when they see it, I send them the video walkthrough. At that point, then they can contact me to make an appointment. Then they're more likely to actually show up. Now,
Qualification.
Yeah, because now they've seen the inside, and you know, now you're not wasting your tenant's time or your time or the potential tenant's time for a place that really doesn't fit for them.
Yeah.
We did that too, Shelley, and I think that's one of the positive things that have come out of COVID is I'm thinking, why weren't we doing video tours ages ago? And they say, oh no, that's not going to work. Great. We just saved each other some time.
Yeah.
So we've actually just put on we have checklists for everything, Shelley, that doesn't surprise you, I know. On our move-in checklist for a new tenant, so whoever's going to do the move-in, we've got it now on our checklist to take a video that can be used for a video tour the next time we're putting a place up for rent. Because sometimes you do the video tour and you're like, oh my God, this place looks so bad right now, right? It is what it is. The video tour now is better than nothing. But we're now doing tours when the property is empty and clean before someone new moves in so that we can use it next time.
Perfect. Good quality. Good quality content, which showcases your property that much better. One take I had on this example from Renee, she took all the responsibility to follow up with the tenant, and I don't do that. She followed up 3 different times, and it's her texting the tenant to confirm. She's babysitting the tenant's behavior, and you're setting that precedence you don't want. So I do very, very similar. I think Shelley and we do the same thing. I think Sandy, I think you mentioned you do something similar as well. I set the expectation at the end of my phone call. If they're the right person, they're a good fit, I'm happy to book my viewing. Welcome in. I said, you have to text me an hour and a half before the viewing. If I don't get it, I don't show up, but they have to text me. And I also use this as a bit of a psychology test. If they are not organized enough to remember to send a text an hour and a half before, then it might foreshadow being more difficult to work with when you're trying to book trades in for repairs and maintenance on your properties. But you put the onus on them to follow up with you to be at the viewing. If they don't show up, don't leave the house, stay with your kids, whatever you're doing that night, if you're enjoying a fire with the family, that's your quality time. And that's why we're in this business, to get more time back. So you really want to be cognizant of how you manage that. But I mean, I feel for you, Renee, because you took the onus to make that happen well. And also being in Calgary, and I'm in the northeast or north central, and I drive down to Ogden. It's a good half-an-hour drive. I've had enough of those where I learned quickly and had these conversations with other experienced landlords. So,
and I think often if you're talking to someone on the phone and booking a viewing, and you explain that, please, I've done that too, right? You need to text me an hour ahead and just explain. You know, I live far from the property and I've got kids at home or whatever it be. So if I don't hear from you, then I'm not going to drive across town for our viewing. Does that sound fair to you? Right? So you have a little bit now of a personal connection, and they're like, yeah, that's fair. Okay, great. I'll watch for your text. I'm really looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, you're going to buy in on expectations. Like, that's just a great way to position the conversation. And I usually just say, yeah, you know what, like, I understand life happens, things change. Just send me a text and cancel it, and we can always rebook later. But if I don't get that text, that confirmation, I got to protect my time because I don't want to drive the no-shows. So yeah, same kind of idea. So
MacKenzie,
cool. Yeah.
Carlene just made or posted something. She said she saw a lease that was a fixed term, and it said in the lease that it went month to month after that, and she wasn't sure if that's allowed. It's totally allowed. It's not something I personally would ever do. Wouldn't be my choice. But
yeah,
then
that.
For the first part of the lease, it's a fixed term, and then it just goes month to month. Now it's turned into a periodic lease. So that's
here it is.
Completely allowed, but realize the consequences, I'll call it, of going to a month-to-month lease. It's not something that I choose for my business.
Yeah, no. So yeah, you can write anything in the lease, well, almost anything you want in the lease, but I just wouldn't structure that way. I would remove that clause because it puts you at a position.
Yeah.
I have one exception. So I rent garages out for storage. So I wised up a couple of years ago and realized that when I have a year fixed term lease for a garage and I come and say, hey, Shelley, your lease is up in 2 months for the garage. Are you staying on? And she's like, oh, right. I really don't need that garage anymore. I've just been really putting off moving all my crap out. No, I'm not going to renew. Now I got 2 months to move out the crap. So now what I do is I do mine 1 year garage lease and then it goes month to month. Because if I never call Shelley and say, hey, Shelley, your lease is up, that crap sits in the garage and the $200 or $250 comes out of Shelley's account every month. And it's one of those things she procrastinates on and may never get around to. So I have way less turnover in my garages now that I let those ones go month to month. I don't mind that.
I'm totally doing that now. I love it. That's awesome.
Pro tip there. Pro tip there.
Yeah. All right, perfect. That's it. Let's wrap her up. We're a quarter past the hour. Too long here on as Mr. Noble says, but oh, he's paying attention now. Okay, good.
He's smiling. He's okay.
He's it was truly fun, ladies, having you guys on. Sandy and Shelley, always a great conversation, and those are some great questions tonight. And I got some takeaways. I've got a lot of things to improve my business on. I'm always learning something from you too. So thank you.
Hey, Mac, I don't know if doing this webpage, Mac, has been beneficial for you and me alone, or has everybody else benefited? Because I've learned a lot since we started this page.
It is so much fun. It's such a wealth of information. It's a conversation that needs to be had, and yeah, always appreciate everyone hopping on and checking out. We're getting some thank yous right now, so that's super
great.
cool.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great. Great.
I'm glad when we bring these powerhouses onto the show with us, it teaches us all a lot of stuff.
Well, I was a little nervous when I heard it was Visser and I on. I thought, oh, this might get a little crazy, but you were really well behaved.
Thank you.
Well, we almost had to turn it into a Dr. Phil show when Wayne Hillier decided to.
I was going to say, we have to do marriage counseling now. But Sandy and I took turns, and we both are chatters, so this is great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
absolutely. So we'll wrap her up. Do you guys want to share anything you got on the go? Passion projects, charities, business ventures? Thank you for contributing your time. So you got a little bit of limelight. Shelley, go first if you want to share anything.
What have I got going on? I've just got all my insurance stuff we're still dealing with. I'll have to do an update again soon.
Yeah, we need an update on
I know,
that.
right?
That was from the summer.
Oh my God, it's ongoing. So yeah, that's still ongoing. Just did a couple more business private money loans this week, so that was awesome. And charity, as always, Children's Hospital.
Cool.
So yeah.
Oh, and people, if you know a good window supplier in Calgary,
Yes.
Shelley's looking for some windows right now. Let her know.
A lot of windows.
Awesome. And Sandy, what do you got on the go, or what's important to you?
So as you know, I love helping people legalize their existing secondary suites. And hey, big tip. So I had an inkling that the city of Calgary was trying to hunt down suites. So I went right to the source. I've had some conversations with Cliff DeJong downtown, and I just asked him up front, are you guys searching out people who are advertising suites that aren't on the secondary suite registry? And he said, yes, we are. So, hey, for those of you out there who have a suite right now that's not on the City of Calgary secondary suite registry, it's a great time to do it. Really, the city's being awesome. It's not that arduous of a process, but realize that if you advertise that suite, there's a bylaw in place that makes it illegal to advertise unless you're on the secondary suite registry. And people are watching, and don't be surprised that your title gets pulled and you get a little letter in the mail saying, hey, we'd like to help you legalize your suite. So I can help with that. Private message to me if you want some help.
Yeah.
I think we should do a show where Sandy comes on, talks about all the suited stuff, the issues you've run across, and what you can exactly do to help people.
All the issues we've run across, that'd be a big long book. But hard knocks. I've learned through doing lots of them.
Well, maybe we'll have to do a special show just for that.
Yeah, I would be a fan of that. I've got 2 in the go. I've got 1 done. I got my permit just the other day, so I'm quite happy for that. But yeah, great tip there, Sandy. I was under the impression, I knew they were going to do it, because why else would they go through this process? I had the assumption after the grace period they're going to start proactively doing it, but you think they're kind of doing that?
No, I know they are.
Now, as of today.
Yeah, and they're not. There's a bylaw in place where there's fines for advertising an illegal suite. They're not imposing the fines. What they're doing is they're saying, "Yeah, Shelley, I hear you have or we know you have a suite in your property. We'd like to come and inspect, please, and you need to legalize it or remove it." So
they're really doing you a favor, because if you get in this grace period, you get grandfathered under a less stringent set of standards, which can save you thousands, 15,000s of dollars up in that range. So it's really a good idea to do it. Okay, let's wrap up on that good turn. Thanks everyone for your time, and we'll check you out next Wednesday on the only show dedicated to landlord in Alberta, the Alberta Landlord Shop Talk.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bye.